Welcome everyone to this third video in a series on implementing unfamiliar project stories using a two-step implementation methodology. In the first video, we examined this methodology, so if you haven't already watched it, I encourage you to view it because it will help you with this story as well as other project stories you may be working on. The implementation story in this video is the following. As an employee, I sometimes need to create asset records manually for computer purchases our team makes so that assets can be assigned and tracked by asset managers. So let's apply our methodology. First, platform components. What platform components are or can be used to create access to tables? Access controls, record producers, scripts and flows that could operate in the background, roles, and new in Washington, D.C., time-limited roles. Second, baseline functionality. At present, there's nothing in the baseline platform that grants users ad hoc rights to create assets. However, the new in Washington time-limited roles would be the closest match, although we would need to create an entry to match our requirement. We can identify two possible solutions. Number one, using time-limited user roles, we could grant the user access to the asset role, but the question would be when to do this, because we don't know in advance when the user needs access, that is when they need to create records. They would have to submit a request for the role, and we could do this and use a flow to process that request automatically and restrict access to the catalog item to only certain users and teams. However, we will be introducing a security risk as the asset role has the power to not only create, but also to write and delete asset records. Solution number two, we could use record producers. Record producers give users the ability to create records in tables without needing to touch roles or access controls. And like the previous solution, we could restrict access to it to certain users and teams. The advantage over the first solution is that we limit the user's ability to create records, and we could even restrict this further and specify exactly which fields in the asset table they are allowed to populate. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, the quickest way I know to create a record producer for a specific table is actually to go to the list or a list for that table, and then just go to the configure menu and down to table. Because there in the table record, there is a UI action, this one here, called add to service catalog. That is, create a record producer for this table. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to bring across these fields here. Now you can bring any field that you want in, but you'll need to be careful because some reference fields may be restricted. In other words, this record producer will grant users access to create a record in this table, but if they don't necessarily have the rights to create or view records in other tables, then there could be a problem, such as this vendor field here. We'll give it a name. We'll call this create asset and a short description as well. And we'll put this in the hardware category in the service catalog. So the record producer is created, and if I scroll down, we can see all the variables are populated automatically. So this is one great advantage of actually creating a record producer this way, because you don't have to go through the process to create variables individually and then think about what variable type do I need for this particular variable. Is it a reference, a single line of text, a select box? So this process is much quicker. So the only thing I'm going to do here is to add user criteria here. I'm going to create a new entry here called asset creators. And just to keep this simple and quick, I'm just going to add one user directly, Joe employee, and save that. So this is ready to go and test right now. So if I move across to my other session where Joe employee is logged in, I'm going to open the create asset record producer, and there it is. I've got the fields using those variables that we specified ready to populate. So I'll go ahead and quickly create an asset record with a model category, a model, and the other fields accordingly. But as you can see here with the vendor field, we're not able to view any vendors because at the moment Joe employee doesn't have read access to this table, so we would need to take care of that later. But I can put a cost in and submit the record, and we have one asset record created now. Again, without touching any access control rules or assigning any roles to Joe employee. And if I come back to my system administrator session here, we can see the asset record is created here, just like we saw in the portal previously. So this is another example of how we can use the two-step implementation method to get the core of our requirement. First, we use our platform knowledge to identify components that could give a user ad hoc create access to a table. We then identified a baseline feature, the time-limited roles feature, that appears like an easy fit, but we argued that a record producer would be a much better match and went on to create one because there wasn't one already for our specific requirement. So stay tuned for the next episode in this series where we will look at troubleshooting a service catalog fulfillment flow.